Okay. Good morning, everybody. All right. Good morning. My name is Samantha Mirabal with Melco's application team. We're doing our DesignSHop Talk again today to see what questions you might have. Let me quick check the platforms and make sure we're live on both of them. I see YouTube. Excellent. And there is Facebook. So we are live on both platforms again. So if you have questions while we're live, please type them in on the comments and I will see them pop up. Hi, Maisha. Thanks for joining today. So type them in on the comments. Don't send them privately. I don't see those. I only see the ones that come in on the actual lives while we're live. So, and we'll try to get through them. I did get quite a few questions this week. I asked a little bit earlier than I normally do. So let's see what trouble we can get into today. All right, so can I do a simple walkthrough of the graphic conversion assistant? Sure, I can, and I'll do that, but I did want to point out we have some really nice videos that Scott has done in the past, and I think even Nate might have one up there. Good morning, Simone. Thanks for joining. So there are some really good videos out there, and we'll try to get you the links to the conversion assistant. It's pretty powerful, and you can do a lot of things with it. So let's see, if I go open up some art, so something that we can deal with, and I go into graphic to conversion assistant. That's this guy right here. All right, so if I click on that, so from here, it's kind of a wizard, right? So you just kind of step your way through the process and follow your instructions and you will be good to go. So, you can read through what it wants. Let's say you look at this design and it's too many colors. You want less colors. You want different colors, those sorts of things. So you can adjust it and it will go ahead and make changes for you. We did get you a link to the video in the comments, so check that out later on the actual conversion assistant. So you start with that. So look at what you've got, what it's guessing for you. And then you can either tell it to auto convert. So you just want it to do whatever it's going to do, or you can step through and you can control more of it. The nice part about if you step through is you can actually tell it what order to sew in. You can add stitch directions, splices, and those sorts of things. So, you can of course say, whatever, just auto convert it and let's see what we got. Cool. So that was one way we could deal with it. Another would be to take your art and say, okay, well, rather than that, let's go ahead and step through it. So when you do a step through, now you're controlling everything and you just keep on next step, next step, next step, and working your way through it. So the first thing it's wanting, it's showing you a lot of information here, right? So if you need to adjust how how it found the edges, you can curve some of the smooths. You don't want holes in there. If there's holes, this one, like the shield, the red has a hole in the middle. If you want to get rid of that, which I wouldn't want to have fill upon fill. So this case, that's pretty good. You can tell it what order to sew in. So if you want to do it yourself, right now the numbers on there are showing you the order that it's going to generate stitches from. So it's going to sew that. Well, what if you want it to go center out? All right, so it's going to do 1, 2, 3. Then the outer, I probably would want the outer last. So what I would do is, personally, I would look at how it's doing. So it's 1, 2, 3, then it does the border for 4, then the E and the 6. Well, maybe I'd want Melco first. So 1, 2, 3, and then the E and the M, and then the border, or the border, however you want to do it. You got to think about it, right? So you can say manual sequencing. So if you do that, now I'm going to click randomly so you can see that I'm telling it the order to sew in. All right. Is that the order we should? No. But you can change it however you want. If you want it to go from one side to the other, let it do center out, or if you want to tell it manually. All right. So that's cool. Then you go to next. What does it want now? You add stitch directions and splices. So here I can come in and go, all right, I don't really know. Let's say you don't know what to do with stitch direction lines. So there's auto compute, and you can tell it to auto compute them. Auto compute for that. Okay. Auto compute for this one. So you can tell it to auto compute and it will auto compute those stitches for you. Okay. If you want to control it, you can go in and put your splices. So the splices are these green lines where it put it, the stitch direction lines, those are all these black things. So you can go adjust them, or you can put new ones in, whatever you want. Then you go to the next color. Again, you can tell It's only one element. So you literally just keep working your way through the design. Next step, next step, next step. You can tell it to, again, auto compute, or you can go put in your splices and do it yourself. So let's say you want to delete all holes in this shape. So let's say we didn't want that cut out of the word Melco. You could use that. And, you know, you literally just kind of go, all right, deleted the holes I don't want. Let's go ahead and tell it to auto compute. All right, I don't like that at all. So auto compute was not my friend here. So I'm going to delete some of those. So you can see, you can edit it. So let's say it does something you don't like. In this case, I didn't like what it did for auto compute, which is fine. So let's just do it that way. One stitch direction for that one. Let's leave that. Delete these guys. That's cool. So let's say those are the stitch directions we want. Next color. Cool. Now notice it covered up my Melco, so I got to rearrange some of these to make it sew in a better order. So anyway, you just work your way through it. So that's the auto conversion. Again, we have a video up there for you to check out. So we have a question that was typed in. How would you small... Oh, goodness, someone's calling me. That's not cool. All right, how will we sew small stars? So we do have stars built into the tool. So if you come down to all right, how did I get there? Let's try that again. All right, select automatic custom shape input tool. So if you click on that guy, then you'll see there's small star right here. So you can left click and drag, and you can put those on. It really depends on how small you're making them, right? So if you'll notice under custom designs, there's a flag here. Okay, this guy's tiny. So in this case, it's actually kind of faux stars, because when it sews out, you know, if you try to make them super small, the stars are going to be, you're going to be hammering the stitches all in the same spot. So it's done this way. So it really depends on how big or how small you're trying to make it, of how you would digitize it. But you do have these available for you, and you can scale them somewhat. I wouldn't pay attention to the size. You start getting too small, and now you're going to be sewing in one spot and not moving, and that's not a good look. But that's where I would suggest. I would start with looking at how small you want them to go, and then using some of these custom designs that are already built in for you, because they sew really nice. I use them all the time. Okay, we have more questions. Yeah, Gina said the small star included in DS sews beautifully. I agree. I use those stars all the time, all of these, because I really like them. Thanks for joining, Rob. All right, let's see. What other questions do we have? I'm trying to digitize for a hat. Then I would personally, anytime I'm digitizing for a hat, I specifically digitize it manually. That's just how I do them, because to me, I want to control how it sews from center out. Now, I did show you when I did that graphic to conversion assistant that you can change the direction of things and the order it sews. And particularly when you're sewing on hats, that becomes important, right? Another thing that if I were like that shield, some things I would probably need to consider is doing some sort of base stitching first to kind of like loose to sew everything down before I sew over it, to hold everything still, tie it to the stabilizer to help things stop moving around. I don't use personally, I don't use the graphic assistant when I'm doing stuff for hats, just because I really want to think about the order, how I'm sewing it, what the underlay is to get the best result, you know, so I'm outlining and finishing things as I go and things like that. So that's kind of the things to consider there. Okay, but we did show you how to center out and how to choose the order. So if you are using an assistant, just think through it of what you're doing to make sure you're always pushing away from things that are anchored. On a hat, your anchor points are the brim and the center seam, right? Those are, you want to always sew away from those whenever possible, because if you sew towards the brim, what are you going to do? You're going to shove all that fabric down into that, so now you're going to get a bubble. Or if you sew towards the center seam from the edge, Next thing you'll want, you're going to be shoving into that center seam, creating issues. Okay. Let's see. I have a large flag, 7x4. The client wants a name, death date. How would I tackle a project? So I would find some stock art that's of a flag of the right size, and then digitize it from there. 7x4, 7 inches, 4 inches. So it's not super big. So you probably still would embroider it. I mean, you could do applique, but the stripes are going to end up being pretty small, so it might be more hassle than it's worth. But what I would start off with is getting you some nice art to trace, and then kind of build it from there. So, yeah, literally, I don't have a pretty flag art handy that I'm aware of. So let's see if I do that. Hi Lorena in Alaska. So let's see, 7 inches. Stop it. And then turn this off and to make that 4 inches, maybe there. So it's 7x4. We're going to center it, and I'm going to copy and paste it. I'm roughing in some art. Okay. What you would want to do is actually get something that is better than what I'm doing here. So some actual art to trace rather than eyeballing it like I'm doing. Okay. Yeah, all right. So I'd have to add some stripes still. And then let's make that blue, and let's add some stars. These stars are probably going to be too big. Oh, they might not be. So I might be able to just copy and paste and create my stars across there and scale them appropriately. So that's, I mean, the biggest thing you have to do to start with is start with the appropriate art that you're going to trace. Oh, all right. I'm in the weeds. I think what someone's asking is how to add an actual name and date to a prefabbed flag. Okay, well that's a bird of a different color, right? So in that case, what you would want to do is create your text file. So name. So let's say you're going to do the name on one stripe and the date on another stripe. So what you would want to do for that is, and it's 7 feet, not inches. Gina just pointed out there's a really good video on how to do it. So of multiple hoopings, all right, that Nate did. I agree, there's a bunch of them. I know I even showed digitizing for large designs a few weeks ago. I'll have to find that for you. So what you want to do in that case, so if you're going to embroider on a really big flag, that's cool. First, decide how big you want each line of text to be. So the name, how tall it needs to be, how long, and digitize that out, right? So whatever the name is, let's say it's going to be 6 inches tall. I don't know. So let's say it was 6 inches tall and big. So in that case, you literally would need to just set this up so that when you go to hoop your flag and arrange it so you have alignment points, you'll get the name centered and aligned right. With the alignment, you have the laser left, laser right, laser bullseye, and that will allow it to rotate and position itself, right? So then if, let's say you're going to use one of the stripes as your alignment point, and you want your name 1/2 inch above that line, right? Well, you just position this so it's 1/2 inch above and it's lined up right on one edge. So when you do your laser left, laser right, laser bullseye, it will left justify right up here, and it will be 1/2 inch above the line you do. All right. It's hard for me to wave my hands at the screen and explain multiple hoopings. I hope you're able to follow that. The laser alignment, it's really easy to do, and it sews really nicely. There's commands in the manual to show you how it's done, and then we have a bunch of videos that show you how to actually do big hoopings with that. So, and that's what I imagine you're going to have to do. If it's 7 feet by 4 feet, you're going to have to do the name in multiple parts. Like I said, probably a month ago, I did in the Facebook Live, I actually had a file that it was all set up for doing a really large multiple hooping, how to set up the files. And then you would use these techniques to actually align them. All right. Sorry I got in the weeds on flag digitizing. So let's see. Does that help at all? It really would be better if I could actually show you sewing it on a machine and setting it up. So we'll have to look at that. Okay, we have a question typed in. Do you know if you simulate fabric in a design already created? Yeah. So there's a few ways you can handle that. So if I draw, I'm just going to do a square. All right. And we're going to make it fit. Right click, operations, change element type, applique, and I'm just going to replace it. All right, so now I got an applique. And now if I go into that and go to properties, under here you can change the solid background color, or you can change it to graphic. So if you go to graphic, you'll see there's already some here, and you can select fabrics, or you can scan your own fabrics and have them in there. So yes, you can do that. You can do your own and things like that. I tend, when I'm doing these sorts of things, I'll show you what I do. I don't tend to use that feature a ton, although it's there and it works great. But what I tend to do is this. So let's say I'm going to convert this to a vector, and I've got an outline, right? So this is an applique piece. Let's say I just simulate it with vectors, with, you know, whatever color fabric rather than the pattern fabric. So this only works if you're using solid color stuff. If you're, will it work in a way that's not digitized with DesignShop? So in order to do it with DesignShop, the fabric side of it is not going to work. You'll have to do that in Photoshop or something like that. But if you are going to just add solid colors, absolutely, just draw vectors behind it, right? So if this were let's do a shape. There we go. So let's just pretend that's a shape and it's an expanded format. It was digitized somewhere else. You don't have the wireframe. Clearly I do, but let's pretend we don't. Then I can come over here and say, all right, select vector, fill input method, and I can go draw myself. And when I'm doing these personally, I also do them that roughly, because it doesn't matter. You just want it covered up, right? So you're just simulating a solid color fabric. And you can make it be whatever you want. That is blinding. I don't like it. All right, there we go. So, and what's cool about using the vectors, when you do the save off, so if you were to do file, save as, and tell it to be a JPEG, we don't want it there. Where do we want to put it? Let's put it, where's my stuff? Let's put it here. All right. So when you save it off as a JPEG, what's really fun is it will save that vector off in the file. So now you've got an image that you can send, a proof that you can send to your clients or whoever so that they can look at it. All right, so I had some big ugly text in this file, but you can see I've got my green, I've got my satin stitch, and then the mess I made over in the corner. So, but yeah, you can save it off and save it as a JPEG, and now you have a mock-up to email and send over to your clients. Works great. Okay, let me see if I missed any other questions. Deep Lagoon, again, sorry I got in the weeds. I'm flag digitizing. Take a look at the archives. If you still are having problems with it, let us know. It's what I can do is I can set up some files and little sample things to show you that make it a little easier, but it's large hoop embroidery is fun. I do multiple hoopings, 3 to 5 for a lot of projects I do. And it's, as long as you use alignment, it works great. Let's see. Someone's typed in on YouTube, I'm experiencing thread shredding and have checked the needle orientation, the thread path, and the bobbin. Any suggestions? So thread shredding, so we have another question that also says, how do you troubleshoot thread breaks? So this is a good time to discuss it. So when there's thread breaks, I tend to ask folks, what type of thread break is it? Is it a clean snap type break, or is it caterpillars? I don't know how else to describe it. So I imagine little caterpillars climbing up the thread. So as a fiber breaks, it kind of moves up. Another fiber breaks, it moves up, but you're still sewing. So at some point you end up with this big old caterpillar, and then the thread finally breaks. Okay. So depending on the type of break, personally, I go through it a little bit differently. We did get you a link on how to troubleshoot, so take a look at that resource for some more ideas. But depending on the type of break, that kind of guides, at least when I'm looking at stuff, of what am I going to do about it. So if it's a caterpillar, I look for a burr, right? So something wrong with the needle, something wrong with the needle plate. Is there a scratch? Did I have a really aggressive needle break and now I've got a scratch in the hole? Did I have an aggressive break and now I've got a scratch on my hook? So I look for burrs, whether it's on the needle. And yes, I have found entire packs of needles that are actually defective. They've had burrs inside the eye of the needle and on the hole. So if you keep on replacing needles, take a look at that. See if you can find a rough spot on it. I'm not sure if she's on today watching, but my trainer, when she originally taught me, I can remember her saying, all right, you just feel for a burr, and oh, look, this needle's bad, that needle's bad. And she was rubbing the back of her nail down the length of the needle around it and going, oh, that one's bad, that one's bad. And I picked it up after she pulled them out, and I remember thinking, I have no idea what she's feeling for. Because it feels like a needle to me. It's going to stab me, right? It wasn't, but every time I took a needle out, I'd kind of feel down the eye of the needle, just trying to figure out what it is I'm supposed to be feeling for. One day I had a really bad burr, and I went, that's what we're talking about when we say a burr. That's the kind of rough spot on the needle. And now I've gotten to where, I can feel those tiny, slight burrs. And it's just with practice. So what I suggest is, as you're pulling needles off, just feel them. At one point, you're going to find one that's really got the tip knocked off or something like that, and you'll start noticing what to feel for. Okay, so look for burrs on the needles for caterpillars. I would start there, on the hook, on the stitch plate. Look for rough spots. You can do that. I've seen people also do it with Q-tips. I don't like that. To me, it makes a mess. But I've seen people do it and they love it. So it's another option of trying to look for burrs. Let's see. So if threads are snapping, so caterpillars, I look for burrs. Snapping thread, I look at my settings. All right. Now, is it all? Are caterpillars only burrs? No. Are snapping only machine settings? No. It can be in between. But that's kind of where I start as my starting point. On snapping type breaks, I look at my active feed. Is it too low? Right? Is my thread super brittle? If you're working with specialty threads like the frosted mat, the glow threads, the rayons, they're not as strong as your polyester threads. So you've got to increase your active feed so that it's not pulling it so tight, because if it's pulling super tight, you're going to snap the thread. So look at your active feed. Maybe your minimum needs to come up a little bit. That's kind of where I start when I look at thread breaks. What type of break is it? And that kind of guides where I begin. If you've already checked what I like to say, check the obvious. Is your thread caught up top? Definitely check that as well. Where the thread comes onto the machine? If the tube isn't higher and your thread is, touching the actual cone, that the spool, what you'll notice is those spools are plastic. They're injection molded, and sometimes they have rough spots on them. So if the thread is actually snagging even briefly on the rough spot on the spool because your tube isn't high enough above the top, that can actually stall the thread and cause a break down at the needle. So you'll spend all your time staring at the needle and the hook area and trying to figure out what's going on. But it's actually the setup of the thread. So that's another thing to consider. But yeah, check out the resources. That's where I would suggest starting. Okay? So see if that helps a little bit. But yeah, try increasing your active feet a little bit and looking for burrs. All right. Did someone from Milk get text? Nope. Okay. All right. Let's see where we're at. So we talked about that. YouTube questions. All right, first fruit, Corbin. Hopefully that helped you. All right, so let's take a look at these. Is there a tool to split the fonts in half so parts of the letters are different colors threads? Is there a tool? Yes, kind of. Yes, there is. It's not just a poof done. You got to kind of plan out what you're doing. Okay, actually, let's change this to a blockier font. I'm going to go to block 2 because it's bolder, and I'm going to make it all caps. All right, and then let's center it, make it bigger because I want to, and I'm going to go into properties and make this a flat fill because why not? And I'm going to go to operations and convert to wireframe. All right. So I got these weird connectors in here, but that's because my tie-off stitches are set weird, but that's all right. Okay, so let's look at splitting it. So I've got, let's do the S. All right, first decide where you're going to cut this in half, right? So I tend to use this vector tool a lot for just planning out what I'm doing. Right? So I can do a vector line, a vector block, just something so I know what, so I can keep things even. So let's say I want to cut all my letters right across that line. So I'm just drawing that so I have something as a reference point. Okay, so I'll turn off the grid because we don't need it if we have that. Okay, so all I'm going to do is, there's a bunch of ways to do this. I'm going to do it a few different ways so you can see. So I added points along here. So I have one selected. I need to select the other. So I'm going to hold my control key, click that. And then if I hold this button down, there's split element at selected points. And now I have a top and a bottom. All right, let's do it another way. So let's say I've got this letter. And I'm going to come here and say this guy right here is insert splice. There we go. So I'm just going to draw a splice line across here. Cool, and let's move that up. All right, I like that. So now I'm going to select my element. So the A that I want to split up, I'm going to right click on it, operations, break object. And it split there. I actually needed to draw 2 splice lines, so let's do it again rather than one across. That's all right. So I've got this one, object, operations, break object. Anyway, I still did not split it because I didn't draw the things right. Let's draw it correctly. Delete this. I'm going to split it here. Split element. So we have a top and a bottom. So you can come through and add, like if I have multiple split lines. So I'm going to insert a split. Let's do it again on this one. So I'm going to add split line, split line. I'm going to make a crazy one just to be different. Okay, so I added a bunch of split lines on here. Can move them around, select my element, and then you can go object, break object. I can right click, operations, break object. It all does the same thing. So now I've got this broken up into multiple pieces. Okay, so it's all split up. So you can make it whatever color you want. So if I want the top all to be gray, I can select both of them, make it gray. If I want the bottom to all be red, I can make all those red. So yeah, you can split them up. All right, what else do we have here? What should I do when adding an image and using the graphic? It doesn't convert all of the image. So that when you're working with images, it really depends on how clear and how good of an image you have. You'll have better results with vectors. So because raster graphics, it's going to be looking for edges on there. So the cleaner and the higher quality the actual image is, and the more suited it's already prepped for embroidery, the better the conversion is going to be. So I always try to find or get vector graphics before I do anything, just because it's the vector graphics. Like this is, if I make this a vector, operations vector. All right. So if I got this as a vector graphic, the only difference between this and a sew file is a stitch direction. So I can actually quickly make this a sew file just by adding a stitch direction without having to do any tracing, expecting it to interpolate between all the little pixels to guess where the edges are. So it's really about having clean art. So clean, high quality art is what's going, when you're dealing with images, of how it's going to convert it. You can always use the stitch graphic region, which that one's kind of fun. So let's go open up a picture. C drive, designs, graphics. All right, so there's a stitch graphic region, which what that does is it looks for all the edges. So if it missed something, you can always try that, and it will look for just that color, and it will do a conversion and trying to find that. That works pretty nicely when you're dealing with images, and just, you know, click through. I want this, that little dot. Now I have that little dot. And you'll notice it's not the best interpretation of it because it's a pretty rough graphic. It's not a clean graphic. Okay. So I try that guy too. So you can tell it to convert, and then you can always use the stitch graphic region to kind of work through it. But just keep in mind, you need clean art as a starting point. All right, so we split some stuff. Now you want to do group names. That's cool. And we have another one here, and I kind of combine this into one example. So someone asked, hey, how can we blend colors like this? So we have a bunch of videos we've done on blending. I meant to do this last night, so it would be nice and pretty, and I got hosed up with personal projects and working on those at all hours, so I didn't actually do it last night. So I quickly pulled together something before this, so it's not my best work. All right, so let's look at it. All right, so how do we do blends? Blends are really what you'll find in all the articles. Nate did a really good article on Melco blog that talks about the saturation levels and choosing the right colors and different things to consider as you're doing blends. So you should definitely check that out, because what I have here color-wise is not ideal. It's not going to be the best blend, but it's a starting point just to give you an idea. So really how I looked at this of creating how you would create the overall design as a blend is, all right, look at it. How do you want to split it up? Well, it's really what, a yellowish, a red, and then some oranges, right? So that's kind of the blend. If you're going to do it as, let's say, 5 colors, right? So you'll have split this up and then put your blend over it. So what do I mean by split it up? All right, so I've got 3 rough colors here, and those are just going to sew as straight embroidered, and I would want to do them as fill, not satin like this, because if I want to blend over it, I want to have the blend be over the fill, right? So you would break it up into 3 colors, and then you would add your blends over top of it, right? So all this is the same shape, but now if I go into the properties under effects, you have this custom density thing. So I just set it to be custom. You can use convex and try it, but all you're doing is covering up that split, where the hard line between it, and then feathering that color out. So now you're blending those colors together, right? So you can see that's what all that's doing there is it's covering the hard line between those, and these stitch directions got to change, but anyway. So it's covering that hard line between it and blending the third color over it. And same thing with the next one. So between the orange and the red, again, it's using this and going into the effects and doing a cut. You know, how I did this is I started with a convex. I hit apply and looked at it and went, okay, I don't like where that split is, so now I'm moving it around until I like it. See that? So it's just moving that center grouping. You can add points, you can move them around, that sort of thing. Okay, and you just move them around until you get the coverage that you want, covering up that hard line between it. All right, and so really the key to making a nice blend is making sure your colors are selected appropriately. And you really want to do that with the actual physical threads, looking at them outside, making sure that you're getting that nice blend across all of them. But that's how I would do it. And like I said, I did this one fast, and the color blending is not on the Melco webpage. Yes, so we'll get you some links. I know we have one link already posted on, it looks like it was both on Facebook and YouTube. And I know we've done a bunch of videos, so check out the links that we already put up there for you. Let's see, let me see what they take us to. Yeah, so there's color blending, the splits, it talks about, you know, saturation and stuff like that. And then, yeah, I know there's some other videos that I can look for some links to you for you later as well. So I'll add some additional links. You make that look so easy. I've done it for a few minutes, and I really like this type of stuff. So to me, I can see it in my head, and it's easy. Some people, I can visualize things well before it's done and go, ooh, I know how I'm going to do that. Anyway, all right. So let's see, what else do we have? I started down this path because of group names. All right, so we talked about this one. How would we do that? Now, the other one is group names. So this person says, all right, I want to bring a bunch of names in and sew it on separate garments. And I want to sew a logo and names at the same time. And I don't want to have to, basically, you don't want to have to edit every file. So can we do this all at once? Yeah, we can. It's fun. So let's see, DesignShop. All right, so what is this? I typed some text with the word name. So then once you pick your text, set your settings, what underlay you're going to use, what font, all that fun stuff. So you get that all set up. And I don't want it there. Let's put it underneath this logo. And yeah, now I'm going to go into the properties. Down here, you got this group name thing. It's fun. So you can add names. You can actually import names from a CSV file from Excel, or you can copy and paste. Let's see, who didn't I use? Use my sister, my daughter. Yeah, all right, there we go. Let's add that name. All right, so if I'm adding an additional name, I can add, these are all the available names. If let's say Tom's not, or that person's not getting it anymore, it's just these 4 people. All right, so that applies it. Notice, you know, I got something going here. Down here, this output is the interesting part. So how do you want this to sew? Do you only want it to sew the design once and then sew names? Or sew the design, the name, and then repeat it back to front? That's what I like to do, design, name, repeat. All right, so when you save this, it shows one name, yet in properties, I got a bunch of names. So what's going on here? Well, when you load it to the machine, the only way I can show you this on the computer here without having a machine handy is to save this as an expanded format. All right, so I'm going to save it as an expanded format. And now when I open that expanded format, you're going to see some interesting things. Look at that. So what was a 6-color design is now a 24-color design. So again, what's going on here? So you'll see it's going to sew the design and the name. All right, so how do you practically use this? You would program your machine 6 colors, and then you would either put hold or applique stop. All right, and that, what I mean by that is you're going to treat it like, I think I left the picture in here because I always come back to it. Yeah, so you would use applique or hold. All right, so one of those, you'd program your 6 colors and hit applique, apply OK. All right. So when you go to sew the file out, this is how you do it. You have it programmed for 6 colors. You hoop your shirt, you put it in the machine, you hit go. It's going to sew the 6 colors, and when it gets to the applique, the hoop's going to come out from under the hoop. And then if you have applique, if you have hold, it's just going to sit there. All right, you take that shirt off, throw it on the table, grab your next hoop, which has your new shirt on, shove it on the machine, hit go. All right, so now this isn't sewn because I've got a new shirt. So now what happens? When you hit start, it's going to start at color number 7. And it's going to sew that. All right, so when it's going to sew the next 6 colors, and it's going to repeat. So it's going to go back to the start, run the same 6 colors, and now it's going to have a hold. So you pull that shirt off, throw the next shirt on the machine. It's going to sew the next 6 colors. And you just rinse, repeat. So you only have to program one set of colors, and it's going to repeat it until it gets to the bottom of the file. So the file looks bizarre when you load it, but you're going to just sew 6 colors. Next one, next one, next one, next one. It's a really fast way to do it with one file, particularly when all you're changing is names. It's great. Okay, let's see. Did that help? All right, so let's see. What else do we have? Back to my questions that were sent. All right, so that was the group names. I'm trying to make sure I didn't miss anything since I'm bouncing around today. I'm sorry. All right, so settings aren't saving permanently for the current job. All right, so in DesignShop, let's go to Gina. I don't think so. So Gina's asking, is there a way to have the hoop come out further than the default distance? I don't believe so. I think it's standard. I can imagine one way to do it, but before I tell you, I would want to talk to the guys to see if that's dangerous with what I'm thinking. So I can't tell you guys to do dangerous things. So let me check with the guys, because off the top of my head, I'd have to say no, there's no way to do that. I can think of one way, but oh, someone wants a pocket design. All right, so I'm going to leave this art because I'm going to use it for that. So let me check with them and see if what I'm thinking would even work and if it's not risky. And if so, I'll share it with you. What was I doing? Oh, settings. So let's talk about settings, and then we'll talk about Pocket Applique because that was typed in as a live question. All right, so settings. When you go and change things, so if I go into properties and let's say I don't want auto density, I want it to be this. Oops, I hit cancel. That doesn't do anything. All right, so, okay. Oh, I had auto apply on, so it's fine. Okay, so if you do that, you'll notice if I come, that was for a satin stitch, but if I come make a new satin stitch, my auto density is still on. That's annoying, right? So if you want to overwrite your permanent defaults for either a document or for all of them, so you always want to turn on something or turn off something, what you would do is, I always say do this from a new file to start with. On your thing over here, your toolbar, right click on something. All right, so that will bring up what your current properties are set to. All right, so then you go through it and go, okay, well, maybe I don't want this. I want that to be there. And what do I have for this? Maybe I don't like that at 32. I want it to be 20, you know, whatever, make changes. Okay, so let's say that's what I want. Well, right here, I've got save current settings to defaults. I can either save it for this document or for all defaults permanently. Okay, now this, if it's saved permanently, when you open up old files, it's whatever that file had, right? So you can always tell it to save for the current document. So let's say on this document, I want to change something. Okay, well, I can go and say, make my same changes that I want. And then rather than telling it to go permanent just for this document, and now all properties will be updated for, it'll be updated for this document only. All right. Now, anytime I start a new file, because I overwrote my defaults earlier, notice my density, which was 4 or auto, now it's 3.8. So it will go ahead, and as long as you save them there, new files, it'll always take, if you are working with old files, you're going to have to modify, it's whatever was that file was saved with. So you're going to have to modify that document. And you just do that within the file. Say, all right, right click on this one, go make whatever changes, and then you say for current document only. Now, whenever you add new files, even to old, it's going to go off of whatever properties you have saved for the permanent. Okay, but it's not going to change old stuff unless you go change them. So hopefully that helps a little bit. It really depends on what you're trying to do. But yes, you can absolutely overwrite your defaults and have them stay. But you just got to save it for the default. We talked about thread breaks already. So this is kind of a compound question. They also want to know how to quickly change colors on things, on multiple color fonts. So let's see, 3 color. I want a 3 color font. All right, let's do a 2 color font. 2 color block. Color. All right. So I've got a 2 color design, 2 color font. I don't want to have to come in here and change each individual color of all 10, particularly if you've got a lot of text. It's kind of not ideal, right? So notice over here, this is how many unique colors are in the design. So right over to the left, if I right click on that, I can say edit color and go, okay, let's make that one that color. And let's make this guy white. Cool. So now it changes them globally. And you can do that. So if you had a 3 color design, that's cool. Just change them over here and it will change them all at once. All right. So that's a quick way to do it. Super fast. All right. We talked about this guy. All right. So there was a question typed in about pockets. Where is it? Can you show us again how to set up a design over a pocket? Cool. Let's do that. Where is the weird looking pocket that I drew? There it is. All right. It's an upside down pocket. I'm going to flip it and call it a pocket. There we go. I'm going to call this my pocket. So let's say this is a pocket on my design, on my shirt. And I'm going to move it so it's lined up with this red line, which is the origin, the center of the hoop. All right, so let's make it, that's a really ugly pocket. Oh well. All right, so this is a vector. It's only in there so that you guys have something to look at, right, as we're digitizing this. So what do I want to do? I want my text to be, pick your number above your pocket. I'm going to say 1/2 inch, which happens to be this line right here. Okay, so I'm going to create pocket text. I guess it should say over pocket text, but you guys get it. So I'm going to line it up so that it's centered. And this is a really asymmetrical pocket. I guess I should have just drawn a new one. Whatever. There we go. All right, so I got a pocket. I'm going to center my text on my pocket. And it's positioned 1/2 inch above my red line. All right, so when you go to do this and actually sew it, this is where I want this is how I want my file to look. Positioned kind of in the air, 1/2 inch above this, centered on this axis, and 1/2 inch above this one. Because what does that do? All right, when I go to hoop my thing, I'm going to hoop it so that I can see the corners of my pocket. All right, so I'm going to hoop my shirt so I can see the corners, or at least the same points. I'm going to move to this point. I'm going to do laser left. Then I'm going to move to this point. I'm going to do another laser left, and then I'm going to do a laser bullseye. The software will center and rotate the design along that. So let's say you're like me and and you don't pay attention to how you hoop pockets. And you hoop it like that, because it doesn't matter. You're going to laser align it. Because of how we had, actually I need to undo that. So let's say you hoop it and it's positioned like that. Well, when you load the file, it's here. But when you do your laser alignment, what's going to happen? It's going to take this file and it's going to rotate it and center it 1/2 inch above your pocket that you have hooped crooked. So it's great because you don't have to worry about hooping perfectly straight, which I can do, I just don't. So I usually just slap it on and call it good. All right. And then use the laser alignment, and I'm happy as can be. All right, what other questions do we have? Boy, I've been chatty today. Got off in the weeds. Sorry. What other questions do you guys have? Anything fun? Or that I missed? I'm quick trying to scan through the questions on the... Talked about those. Do you have to make the font placement in DS above? Unless you're going to move it manually, yes. So let me undo my movement of my pocket. So if I placed this right here, all right, so ignoring the pocket, right? So if I placed it centered directly on my file when I created it, when I go do laser alignment, it's going to put the pocket right there. So if I were to sew it, I'd be sewing my pocket shut. So is it okay to do that? Yeah, you can still do it, but what you would then do is have to use your pantograph and move this. And the problem I have with that, so you just move it and trace it until you like where it's positioned. But the problem is, particularly if you don't hoop straight, when you move things up, it's actually getting off center from the pocket. So I prefer to place it however high above the pocket you want it to be. So 1/2 inch, 1/4 inch, you know, whatever it is. Place it where you want it to be in the file. That way when you go sew it, when you do your laser alignment, it's ready to sew. And when you do your trace, you'll notice the trace moves up, it draws a box, and then it moves back down to the center. So it works really well. Yes, you can do this, and I think there's some video that Moko shows even doing that, where you place it here and then you manually move it up. It's a really old video. It was done a long time ago. Anyway, so there's a video there. I personally don't do that because I'd rather not risk getting my text off-centered from the pocket. All right. Did that help any? Hopefully it did. Gina, I'll have to get back to you on that one. You've never mastered, Ben. Oh my goodness. Laser alignment is amazing. Maybe I should just talk to them about making a bunch of videos on setting up files and then sewing them out so you guys can see how it sews. Because the hard part here is my machines are out there and I'm in here. So hand waving is fun, and I can show you what I'm doing for setting up the files and kind of hand wave it by drawing vectors, but it's kind of neat to see. Yeah. If the pocket is not straight, would you center it over the pocket? Or always over the pocket? I guarantee you, if the pocket's sewn on crooked and you put the embroidery perfectly straight to the shirt itself, your customer will tell you your embroidery is wrong because their eye is drawn to the pocket. And if your text is like this, they're going to tell you that's wrong, even though you can say, no, the text is right because look at the shirt. But no, always, pockets are always crooked. All right, always is a strong term. I can stare at something and go, that's slightly crooked. And if you straighten it out, it will look wrong. So you always want to line it up to the most prominent feature. Otherwise, everyone would look at this and tell you it's crooked, even though the pocket's crooked. So whatever's the most prominent feature, align it to that, because regardless of whether that was put on right or wrong, it's going to look correct. All right, any other questions? All right. Well, this was fun. Long today. Thank you. All right, well, good morning, Georgia. I'm just about wrapping up, so if you got a quick question, let me know. Otherwise, these videos do stay up on both Facebook and YouTube, so they're always available to be looked at later. There's an archive link on the FAQ section of the service site for Melco, and in there you'll find kind of a list of topics and things like that. So I hope that you had learned something today. Let me know what other questions you might have, and we'll try to get them answered. I feel silly for getting off in the weeds about the flag earlier, so oh well. That's what happens when I read fast and don't think and just start talking. You guys have a great weekend. I'm going to try to get back to rowing, see if how that works. Yay! I'm glad your issue got fixed. All right, well, I will be back next week. Today's Friday, so next week I'm going to have to do it on Thursday. So, yeah, because next Friday I have doctor's appointments. All right, you guys enjoy your weekend and have some fun, do some new projects, see what questions you come up with, and see what we can do. All right, I will talk to you next time. Bye, everyone.